at my house in West Townsend, Vermont. Where do you go to school?
Where did I go to school? Down to West Townsend, down at the foot of the hill. You know where that is?
Yes, I do. Yep.
Some of your friends live there now, I think.
Yep, I do. Well, how did you get to school?
When I first started school, we had to walk. We didn't have buses.
And was you a little older? Did you get buses?
No. My brother, when he got old enough to have a license when he was in high school, we rode with him. Other than that, no, we didn't have a bus. We didn't live far enough from the school. You had to live more than 1.5 miles to the school before they would carry you.
What was school like?
What was it like? It was typical. It was a one-room school when I first started. And one teacher taught all the grades. We were all in one room. And then eventually we had a second room. And I don't know, I think it was first 4 grades maybe went in there. I can't remember. But it was nice. I enjoyed school.
So what was your favorite subject?
I really don't know what was favorite. I enjoyed pretty much everything. I guess I was good at arithmetic. I remember when I got to high school, I won a math prize, which I was surprised, but I liked English. I liked to read. Geography, I liked geography, yes. I liked most everything.
What was your favorite what games did you play during recess?
Tag, of course, kick the can. There was one called Red Rover Come Over or something, I don't know.
It's called Red Rover nowadays.
It is, you still have that. And then they used to have a place where you could shoot horseshoes too, when you know, and I like to do that.
So, how much homework did you have if you had any?
I don't think I was typical. I never had homework. I used to get my work done at school primarily.
So you usually finished it all before you got home?
Mm-hmm. But as I can remember, I didn't start school until a year late because my mother thought that I was too little to walk down the hill. So she kept me back a year. And so when I got to school, I'm not sure if I skipped a grade to get back up to where I should have been. So I didn't start until I was 7 because she didn't want me having to walk up and down the hill.
So, were your teachers strict?
We had a very good teacher, as I remember. I liked her a great deal. She was strict, yes. She kept good discipline. She had to keep after some of the older children, I remember. I remember how embarrassed one was if they had to move down into the front seat because caught you whispering or something.
So how did they punish?
How did they punish? I think she used to walk around with a ruler once in a while. She never got into punishment too much that I know of. I know that some of the older boys, she used to have to walk around and kind of flick them, tap them on the shoulder.
Mhm. So what was your best memory of school?
My best memory? I don't know what my best memory was. When I first started, of course, we had the younger grades didn't go all day. So I can remember how boring it was for me to have to play outside from 10 o'clock on maybe until lunchtime, because I'd lived so far from home that I didn't go back and forth, to lunch. We always carried our lunches. And I used to have to find something to do. There's a big stone down there that we used to pound little stones in, made a hole in. Sometimes I'd get to go home with one of the other children to play during that time. But I don't remember what my best memory was.
Hmm.
I enjoyed school. Hate to tell you.
Now we're on to state, national, and world events.
Why?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
How did the Great Depression affect your family?
Personally, we were always what you'd consider poor, but I don't think we knew it. So we children never realized it, but what we had enough to eat. We had clothes, although a lot of them were hand-me-downs, I have to admit. But of course, we were living on a farm, and that made a big difference because they raised a lot of their food. And I know it was hard. It's always been hard to earn a living on a farm. So I don't think the Depression impressed me that much.
Did you ever see anyone famous?
Did I? Well, no. No. My mother did, though. She saw General Eisenhower came when she was at the STOA, so she got to meet him. They brought him in. That was before he was elected president. That's about the most famous person I ever saw, I guess. I can't remember. I guess I met Governor Aiken once, but that was later on in life.
What happened
What happened? About what?
when you saw Governor Aiken?
I just got to meet him and shake his hand. We was at some kind of a meeting. I'm not sure if it was a Farm Bureau meeting or what it was. But he was very involved in agriculture and state programs and so forth.
Did anyone fight in the Civil War or World Wars in your family?
The World War?
Or the Civil War?
I don't know about, yes, I guess I had an ancestor that fought in the Revolutionary War. I imagine I don't remember hearing about any in the Civil War. But in the World War, yes, I had uncles that went to war. My father wasn't able to go to war. He wasn't well enough to go.
Now on to local events.
No, how did the Great Flood of 1927 affect you?
Your community?
I wasn't born then. I'm sorry. I remember the big flood of '36, though, when it washed out the hill down here. That was something else. That was a hurricane and flood. They had big gullies, and we walked down the street, and the trees were lying over the road like matchsticks, these huge trees we had to climb over. And when we got down there, we discovered, of course, that there wasn't any school because the flood was so bad. And people on the island had to be evacuated by leading them off, by them holding onto a rope and so forth. Down, you don't know about the island where the station used to be because that's all gone now. It's behind the dam. But they had a real exciting time. There used to be a mill down there and houses and chicken farms. And so the flood kind of isolated us. But I mean, like I say, we walked to school anyway, so the road was impassable for quite a while. And I remember what a terrible night it was when I remember the wind. It always comes at night, seems like.
So now we're really on to local events. What was the biggest social event in your area when you were young?
Social event? I don't.
Like a fair or I don't know, like maybe a band play or something?
No, they used to have parades around, I guess, on 4th of July and things like that. We didn't. Up here, we were up on the hill here, and we were more or less, not really by ourselves, but we didn't get to go to a lot of those things that the other children did. Sometimes I used to feel left out, but for the most part, we had chores to do, so you didn't have a chance to miss it. But I guess local parades would have been the main thing that I can remember.
So, what kind of special events ever happen in your town that you know of, besides parades?
No, I don't know.
Did your fam-
I don't remember the big fires in Townsend or anything like that, no.
Did your town have a band?
Not West Townsend, I don't know, Townsend may have, I don't know.
What was town meeting day like?
I didn't get to go to town meeting until I was probably in high school, and I really can't help you. As I remember, we would probably have stayed home and helped with chores and so forth, done whatever needed doing. Town meeting day often came in sugaring time, and we would have been involved or whatever.
So, now we're on to daily life and childhood.
Oh, I'm kind of mixing it all up, aren't I?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, okay. When did you first get electricity?
Well, I don't know the year, but I can remember when it was. Because I can remember having lamplight, you know, what a great thing it was when we had electricity for the first time. Well, it was in the 30s, I know. I don't know specifically when, exactly when.
How did it affect you?
How did it affect me? Well, it made life a lot easier, of course. I mean, you got used to things, but we didn't have a lot of electrical appliances, certainly, at first. It's hard to imagine how we got along without it now, of course. I mean, now when the power goes off, you're lost without a light to read by.
When did you first get a telephone?
I think we had a telephone before we had electricity.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound feasible? Yeah. Because we had an old, we had a great, huge one on the wall. Yes, I'd say we had the telephone before we had electricity.
How did it affect you?
Telephone? It was there if you needed it. We didn't get to use it very often. They used to have a central, and then when they'd have ring a fire alarm, they had a code that, you know, they'd ring a fire alarm so everybody would know to pick up to see where the fire was. Otherwise, it wasn't ever used that much, to my knowledge, at least not in our house.
Well, this is kind of your childhood, I suppose. But where did you learn to build your stone walls?
I never learned to build stone walls. It's just something I like to do. I mean, it's just, they needed rebuilding, and so I started, and that, you know.
Practice makes perfect?
Yeah, I guess you learn as you go. You build a few, and if they fall over, you support them a little more.
Well, what was your favorite horse that you ever had?
Oh my goodness, you can't ask me that. My first one was probably very special. The very first horse I had was Golden Jubilee King II. And he was a grade Morgan, and I was so happy to get that horse. But my favorite, I mean, the last one I had was one that I raised from a foal, and I had her for 30 years, so she was pretty special. So all of my horses were special to me. They were real pets.
As you like to call them.
Yeah.
More like real friends, I suppose you'd like to
Yeah,
say.
they were. They were all different. They all had their own personalities, and yes, they were.
Did you mostly eat the food that your family produced?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we did. Don't ask me what I don't like now. I never eat turnips if I can help it.
What slang did you use when you were young that we don't use anymore?
What?
What slang? As in like...
My mother was a school teacher, And we didn't use slang very much when around home. Not if we were going to get caught at it. And we never could use swear words. We were never supposed to swear. So we use them now. Darn. I don't know what I used to say. I don't remember. It's a long time ago now.
When you were young, what did you do on weekends?
What did we do on weekends? You mean on Sundays? We would go to church. Other days, Saturdays was a working day. We had to help on the farm. We usually had chores that had to be done every day. And weekends were no different than any other day, primarily.
Did you have any animals besides horses?
Did we?
Yeah.
Yes, it was my father had cows. I mean, it was a dairy farm, and he raised young livestock and so forth. And they had work horses too, and we raised chickens and raised turkeys and pigs. Raised their own meat.
How about like pet animals, like dogs?
Well, we always had a dog, and there were always cats around up at the barn because they helped keep the mice population down. We had pet skunks once, but I wouldn't recommend it.
What was it like?
What was it like? You don't tease them when you're going to feed them, that's for sure. Oh, I learned that.
Well, I mean, like, what was the raising of skunks like?
Well, we didn't really raise them. My father, I don't know how he happened to have the skunks. Whether he plowed in, did skunks have burrows? Don't remember how, but he got some young, we had a bunch of young skunks. We were not raising them, but I mean, we kept them a while. But I remember once when I was supposed to be feeding them, and they used to sit up and beg, you know, but then after a while they got sick of that, so you don't do that to a skunk. And then we used to have rabbits. We used to raise a few rabbits once. We had pens of rabbits. And we had a pet woodchuck once, which he came back. He hibernated, of course, during the winter, but my mother could, he used to come out, he'd come up by the chimney, he'd come under the floor and come up by the chimney, and she used to feed him donuts and stuff. He got to be quite a pet, but we children couldn't get up to him much, but he knew my mother he knew where his food came from. So he came back one year, but then the next year, I think when he came out, the dog probably got him, I don't know. But he was a cutie.
What chores did you do every day?
What chores? Well, we had to keep the wood box filled. We had to make sure there was enough wood in the wood box. We had to bring water in from the pump is out in the yard, so we had to bring the water in. We had to make sure the horse trough was full of water. We had to help clean out stables. And help feed the animals some, especially the calves. We'd help feed. And there's always, of course, weeding in the garden to do. And potato digging time, you picked up potatoes. You didn't do that every day, of course.
So, how'd you like feeding calves?
How'd I like feeding the calves? I like that. I always liked livestock. Yeah.
What kind of toy? We're in a new subject. We're on toys and games. What kinds of toys did you play them with, and who made them?
I can't remember too much about toys, I guess. We each had a doll. We girls each had a doll. And we used to play board games. Something like what they call bingo now, lotto or something like that. And we had, I can remember that we had a lot of sewing cards. My sister and I did anyway. We could sew. Of course, we had ball and bat. What with the boys around, you'd have that. And we played horseshoes. And we played a lot of fox and geese, especially in the wintertime. You didn't need toys for that. What else? I can't think.
Like, what is fox and geese?
You make a track and you have to follow the track. You make a big circle and then you cut it like a pie, make tracks like a pie, and you have to stay in the tracks and somebody's the fox and trying to catch the geese. Don't let yourself get caught. It's a type of tag, like play it in the wintertime. Usually when there's snow on the ground. It's one thing you could play then. And then we had, I know one year that our neighbors, the Pullmans down there, brought up a mess of homemade toys, and they were wonderful. They had like a wooden mill wheel that turned and barns and stuff. We had a lot of wooden, play toys, corn cobs and stuff. A lot of our toys were like that.
Did you sled down the hill here in the winter?
Yes, we did. There were hardly any vehicles then. That's one way we used to go to school in the wintertime. Can you believe that? Guess you couldn't slide down the hill now. But you know that big corner down there where Mrs. Andrus lives now?
Yeah.
That was what Stein Place, and boy, I always dragged my feet going around there. Mother had to buy me a lot of overshoes, I think. I'd wear out the toe, one of them. They get a lot of repairing. They had a Travis that the older children rode on, but I don't remember ever riding on the Travis. I'd rather drive my own sled. I'd rather be in charge of my own destiny.
What kind of sleds did you have? Like, what were they like?
Oh, I can't. What was the name of that sled? They were typical.
Flexible flyers?
Yes, right. Flexible flyer was one of them, yeah. We had a couple of sleds. Mine was a smaller one, and then I graduated to the larger one where you could ride double. My mother even used to slide down the hill. You got anything there about that? When she was, they gave violin lessons down to the foot of the hill, and if it worked out right, so she could go down, she'd go once a week, once every 2 weeks or something. And that was quite a thing for her to do. Walk all the way down the hill, and then maybe she'd get a ride home, maybe she wouldn't. But something she wanted to do badly enough to go. And she worked hard day and night.
Did you go skiing in the winter?
I didn't, but some of them did. We used to have skating, of course. We had a pond across from the house where you could go skating. But that was as far as we were concerned, that was difficult because ice skates weren't that easy to get.
What were the ice skates like?
Well, they used to have the kind that would clamp onto the bottom of your shoes. You could adjust them, and just a metal frame, more or less, that clamped on. And then, of course, they had the shoe skates like they had.
Figure skates?
Well, figure skates, most people, I guess some of them had those notches on the toes, but I never skated much because I had feet that were hard to fit. And so it kind of limited me, big ones, long ones, and it kind of limited me to getting anything that would fit. And so then my ankles turned over easily too, so I never skated so much, but I used to try. But we slid a lot, and we slid a lot on the crust. Did you ever slide on the crust using cardboard? Yep, we did that.
Now we're into like a summer season. So where did you go swimming in the summer?
Swimming? We didn't swim very much.
Did you swim in the pond?
No. The pond was not considered safe for swimming, but there was a deep hole down in Turkey Mountain Brook. We could go down there if the big, the older kids went too. But for the most part, we were not supposed to go in the water. And then we had a swimming pool down in Tannery Brook. But after haying, getting all warmed up, we'd often go down there. But then we'd have to walk back up and you'd get hot again. It wasn't really that much fun. And then later on, the Pullmans put in a pond, and we were able to go swimming down there. I never learned to swim very well because there wasn't any place to swim. Okay. Kitty.
Did you ever have like a cat that you really, really liked and were attached to?
A cat?
Mhm.
I don't remember myself having a cat. My sister had one she thought a lot of. I think his name was Patches or Pat or something. But I think that was everybody's cat, but she kind of thought it was hers. No, I'm more of a dog person. Our dog was, I think, gotten the year I was born, if I remember, and he lived to be 18 years old.
Now we're on to work. So, do you remember your first job?
My first paying job, you mean? Where
Yeah.
I actually went to work?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, when I got out of high school. Is that the one you want?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
That was
worked,
your first job.
I got a job in luncheonette down in Brattleboro. Waitressing, cooking, whatever. That was my first job. Yeah, my first job. From there, I worked at the Grand Union as a clerk in the Grand Union, cashier and clerk.
Were your employers kind?
Oh yes. Mhm.
Did you ever have your own business?
No, not my business. My mother had the store, but no, I didn't ever have a business.
What was the store like?
It's a typical country store. Had a little bit of everything. Hardware, groceries, gasoline, ice cream. We used to dip ice cream by the cones. And pack it in pints and quarts too. That was kind of hard. Huh?
What else did you?
Where was it located?
Oh, where was the store?
Mm-hmm.
In East Jamaica. It was called the Gleason store. My grandfather Gleason built the place, and so that's why it was named the Gleason store.
Describe some of the technological changes you have witnessed.
Technological?
Yeah.
like, you mean like from pens to typewriters and things like that?
Yeah.
Well, I guess that would be one. I took typing in high school, so that was one of the changes, or I thought it was a change. And now, of course, we got computers, and then, of course, we went from radio to television. That was a change. And now you got the internet, I guess.
Yeah.
And we went from automobiles to flying. Didn't affect me that much, but I remember about it.
Now we're on to transportation.
Now you go. See, I already jumped the gun.
Doesn't matter. Do you remember the first cars?
Yes, the first ones we had.
What type of car was it?
I don't know if it was the regular brand name or not. It was called a Raven Rise. And it was more like it had some wood on the body, and it was like, it was a large car so that a lot of, several people could get in. It'd be more like a station wagon now, I guess. I think probably they got it so that when you know, they could carry more children to school.
So, like, did your car ever get stuck in the mud?
Not that I remember. Not that I remember. I can remember going up and down the hill in the horse and buggy. Riding in the horse and buggy. I wasn't driving, but I remember when we had it. That was how we got up and down the hill before we had a car.
What was your first time riding in an airplane?
I've never been in a commercial airplane. I went up with a friend, but I haven't ever in a small plane, but I haven't been up in a big one. I have that to look forward to. Maybe. I like to keep my feet on the ground or near the ground.
So, how often did you ride in the car?
How often?
Mhm.
Well, when we finally rode to school, we used to ride there. Other than that, I rode in the car very little. Even when we went shopping, sometimes if had to promise not to ask for things if I got to go. But sometimes we got to Brattleboro shopping. I can remember going in what used to be the A&P and shopping with my mother.
What did you think of Amelia Earhart?
Yeah. I didn't think too much about it, except that I thought she was pretty brave to try to fly around the world like she did. She was a pioneer, all right, in her field.
When did paved roads come into your area?
Not soon enough. No, I don't know exactly.
Give an estimated time then.
But I can remember going even down the foot of the hill. It was going along when the road used to go alongside the river. When we used to ride the bus to school, it was pretty muddy and bumpy. Well, so they probably came in the 40s, and then they'd pave some of them, and then gradually do some more.
Why did some of the roads change course?
Well, they moved it away from the river. And of course, when the dams went in, they had to move the roads from out behind that. And they cut out some curves, trying to make them better, faster, I suppose, speedier.
Did you ever meet Miss Roosevelt?
No.
What do you think of Miss Roosevelt then?
Miss Roosevelt?
Yeah.
Who, Alice? No, I
Teddy
didn't.
Roosevelt's wife?
Franklin Roosevelt's wife.
Oh, FDR's wife. Eleanor.
Yeah.
It was Eleanor Roosevelt. I don't know what I thought about her. I don't know that she entered my thoughts that much. Not till later years. Not when I was growing up, certainly.
Back to the subject of roads. How wide were the roads?
Well, they weren't as wide as they are now, but they were, I don't know, probably 3/4 as wide as they are now, at least. They weren't country lanes. They were still roads. They'd been laid out for the most part.
Did you send goods and mail on the train?
I didn't. We used to ship cans of milk and cream, and we used to carry them down to the foot of the hill and put them on a truck. And I suppose they must have gone part of the way from wherever they went after the truck took them probably to the depot. That was the most we ever did that I know of.
Did you ever go anywhere on the train?
When I was young,
Anytime.
well, I've ridden on the train lately, but I haven't, not not when I was growing up. We never had a train ride. We didn't really go that much.
When you were young, what did you think of rocket ships going to the moon?
Never thought of it. Never dreamed of it.
Did you ever even think of man going to the moon?
No. No, that would have been unbelievable. I mean, this is even before airplanes, really. Few airplanes maybe, but not, crossing the ocean and so forth, going around the world. That was far out.
Do you have any other stories to tell or things to say?
I don't think so.
Okay, then we're done.
Wait a minute.
When were you born?
Do I have to tell you that? I was born in 1928. And where? In Jamaica. My mother, well, we were living in East Jamaica when I was born. And I know my mother went up to the doctor's office when I was due. And that was Dr. Heflin up in Jamaica.
And then you moved up in West Townsend, right?
My father's farm. So
So-
I've always lived around here.
Yep. So you always lived in like the West Townsend area?
Jamaica. A few years I lived in Brattleboro. I thought that was wonderful when I first started to get a job. Oh, wow. But then it wasn't long before I was happy to come back home. When I worked at the American Optical, I worked there for several years, and I used to work the night shift, and I could have my days at home, you see, to do things.
What's the biggest difference between your childhood and now?
Well, I think I grew up and what's the biggest difference? Well, I can get around a lot more. If I want to go somewhere now, I can go. I mean, before we were rather limited. I have a lot more freedom to move around and so forth. There's lots more things to do.
So I think we're done now.
Is that good enough?
Yep,
Yep.
that was great.
Thank you so much.
for doing the review with us.
It's something different at least.